Welcome to BAMIT with John, Michael, and Mari, covering all things business, accounting, marketing, and IT. The place where businesses and entrepreneurs find the forest through the trees.
Hello, and welcome to BAMIT. This is Mari Peterson of Marketing Outpost, and of course, I have with me
John Michael Cletus with Peridot Consulting.
And in today's episode, our very first episode, actually, of Season 2 of BAMIT Podcast,
Yay.
we're going to be talking about our paradigms in business. And what does that look like? What does the modern day professional firm look like?
Yeah, modern day firm. I mean, it's, Mari and I both are very, very young people, but we've had experience. Mari's rolling her eyes at me.
Because I don't know who's the really young one in here.
Both of us. I said we both are very young people.
Okay.
But we both worked in what we would call, that was my computer, everybody, what we would call the old firm or old professional firm. And I'll tell you what traditional firm. And I'll kind of illustrate what an old traditional like accounting firm is. So like an old traditional accounting firm it's a brick and mortar. You go in, there's a receptionist. There may be one principal or partner. There may be 20 principals or partners. And if you engage with this old firm, you might meet with the principal, have the meeting regarding your situation. And then that principal, done with the meeting, he'll basically take your file, slap it on a staff accountant's desk, and then go play golf that afternoon while the staff accountant does everything. And does all the work, and then he'll come in the next day and kind of review everything, sign it, and you get your bill and you get your product. That's a truncation of the old accounting firm, but it's also a lot of staff-oriented brick and mortar. You have to go there. It's a 9 to 5. You clock in at 9, you clock out at 5. Law firms, old traditional law firms, kind of the exact same paradigm. You go in, you meet a partner. He or she may not be doing the actual tangible work. It's a staff-oriented work. You talk to them. That's, when you call, you talk to a secretary, you get their voicemail or you leave a message, they'll call you back, that sort of thing. And then what else, Mari? What else is a traditional firm?
Well, I think from a relationship of the team members in there, it's more of a hierarchy. There's a very defined hierarchy that you already know going in, at this level, you make X, Y, Z, and you get these benefits, time off, and so forth, all the way up to partner level. And that's a totally different, tier. There's also, I think, in the traditional model where your customers come to you. You have an office, they come there. It's rare that, unless you're a really, really big client, that the partners in that firm would go to a different location or go to the customer's location. So often it's in a very controlled environment, I would say. And everything is very predictable. You know when they're going to be there. You know what the benefits are. You know how work is expected to be. They have very strict boundaries and rules about their work product, where it's done and performed, all those things.
Yeah. And Mari said from the client perspective, you make the appointment, you go to them, you meet with them, and it's very I may be incorrect in this, but the air that they're doing you a favor by meeting with you.
Well, I guess it feels that way to a lot of people, but it's kind of like we no longer have traveling doctors. You go to a doctor's practice, that's where everything is. The customer has to go to where the service is being provided. I think that in a marketing agency, the traditional marketing agency is very similar to accounting and law. There's an office, you go there, there's a team of creative people inside working, but they're in cubicles or an open floor space design, but they're all in there together where they can basically be not monitored, but more, I guess, regulated. And they have very defined hours and work shifts and whatnot. And again, you go there as a client, you meet with a partner or a group, and then it could be 1 or 2 weeks before you get a proposal. And then you decide whether or not you're going to work with them or not. And then it goes from there.
Yeah. So it's very obviously brick and mortar oriented, very clock in, clock out oriented, very hierarchical. and very traditional. So I'm sure, and these are professional firms that can be kind of transposed from a advertising agency to a law firm to an accounting firm to a marketing firm, sort of that paradigm. And what we are talking to you about is the modern day firm. And what we mean modern day is that the internet is prevalent. Technology is huge to where, for example, a micro example of that is that a bookkeeper today can do as much bookkeeping for as many clients as a staff of 6 would have to do 20 years ago. And one person can do that because the bookkeeping systems are so automated. They download transactions from banks, that you got one person that can do that actual physical work of that many people. That's a tangible example of where technology is changing accounting, for example. But also in the modern day world is paperless, Skype, voicemail, cell phones. All these things have changed how that paradigm works.
So going back to a comparison of the traditional model, in a modern day firm, there really isn't so much of a hierarchy. There will be groups that work in projects. I know in Google they do that. And so on one project team, you may be the leader. On another project team, you may be a contributor or a designer or researcher or something like that. Your role is completely different. A lot of them do work from home or they work from satellite offices. So again, instead of a centralized office, it's a decentralized office. And it's decentralized staff. It's basically the deconstructed traditional model. And now it's all about efficiency, accessibility. And again, because you may not have the traditional brick and mortar 5,000 square foot office building with really nice, furniture and a conference room and so forth, instead you go meet the needs of your clients at their location. So no matter what the size. So before, in a law firm, for example, you would not go meet your clients at their location unless they were a pretty big client. But the, walk-in estate planning lawyer or whatever, they might not go to your home to talk about your estate planning needs, for example. So in the non-traditional modern firm, we come to you wherever you're located in 90% of the cases. But we also have a backup location that we can access where if you don't have a location or don't want to meet there, we can meet at a specified place.
Well, Mari and I, we talk about this a lot, like the challenges we have in the quote unquote modern day firm versus the old paradigm. And Mari and I both, through our careers, we started in traditional firms and we both are now running our own firms that is considered modern day firm, where accessibility is key. Clients have your cell phone, clients have your email. If they need you, either you go to them. But how I kind of transferred into this modern day firm is when I started out, I was in this traditional firm and I started out as a staff accountant and I saw the hierarchical situation of, doing the partner's work. But I found that when I would build my own client base, I was my own staff accountant and I was responsible for my own clients and there was no hand-me-down. So I started having that direct relationship with the clients, that direct contact and accessibility that just sort of morphed into, because I was there while this transition was happening and people were able to call me directly and stuff. And I started developing that. And as an accountant during tax season, you work 7 days a week, 9 o'clock every night. So during that time, I started implementing a home office for sanity's sake. I just need to be around the family. I want to be able to have a home office that I can eat dinner, then go back to work, because a lot of it was head down work. And if I had to drive into an office to get this head down work completed, it was just hard on you and would tear you apart. Still is hard, but at least I can have dinner with the family and then walk in the other room and still get some work done. But when I transitioned and started Peridot, I left a brick and mortar, I left a traditional firm, And my home base at that point was literally my home office. It was where my nice desktop was. It was where my head down work was. But I was really insecure when I started I don't have a brick and mortar. What am I going to do? I got to go out and rent a space and add all this overhead to what I'm doing. And it's going to be a scary proposition. I got to start paying $1,500 a month rent. And I got to get a sign on the door and I got to do all these things. But what I did is I found a co-working space that had a nice conference room and a nice place to meet clients. And I started using that. At the time, I referred to it as a Band-Aid. It was where I would meet clients. It would give me a place to meet them. I can still do my head down work at the home until I figured out what I was going to do with the brick and mortar. But as I was doing that more and more, I saw there was other people utilizing this co-working space the way I was, that you don't need a brick and mortar. You go to your clients, you have a place to meet them. Why add on this overhead if you don't need it? Like, what is it you need it for? And I couldn't answer that question. So I started this Peridot model that is what we're referring to as the modern firm. And Mari can share her story about hers in a minute. And started realizing that it's actually a benefit, and it's the way things are going. If it's so much better because my clients have better service. They have better accessibility. Sure, I've got a space. If we need to meet, we'll meet. At this point, Mari and I, Marketing Outpost and Peridot Consulting, we actually have a co-working space that is exclusive to Mari and I. So it's a really nice conference room. We've got coffee and all the above with whiteboards and flat screen TV and all that. But we just need a nice place to do workshops and meet clients. And that's, if I don't need a place to do head down work, and why add that?
And another dynamic in the traditional versus the modern day is that the traditional model had a hierarchy for the staff and what you were expected to do. And one of those things was sales. So typically, it would be the partners that were the lead generators, or what we would call rainmakers. They were the ones bringing in the clients. They would be the ones joining the golf club or whatever, and out there schmoozing and networking and bringing in the big clients to the firm that then they could assign associates to do the work. So in a non-traditional setting, you do rely more on every person of that non-traditional model being a part of the sales process. So instead of it just being, for example, John Michael having to bring in all the clients, each one of his team also has a shared responsibility in that. So that's also a little bit different. Most people gravitate to the traditional because it is a little bit, I guess, conventional and safer and steadier, versus thinking about, oh my gosh, if I go into a non-traditional model, I'm going to have to be responsible for hustling a little bit and bringing in sales and going to do more networking things than if I was an associate in a traditional firm where I could just sit back. I'm supposed to just churn out the work all the time and somebody else is going to bring me the work.
Yeah, and it is true that if you're a staff accountant, it's nice because you got to learn your chops. You got to learn what you're doing. And Mari and I, we've had these conversations. How do we grow our firms in the non-traditional model, in this model that we have? And in reality, with, software these days, it's all cloud-based. In many ways, it's easier for me to train or show somebody something through a screen share software to where we're talking on the phone and I'm going line by line than I am them doing the return and circling and Xing it out and telling them what they're doing wrong. So the training process is better. It's more hands-on, even though they may be at their living room in one side of town and I'm in my living room on the other side of town. We're still very connected. We're texting all the time. We're talking all the time. Clients have direct access. They know that one person might be doing, the payroll, so they can talk to them directly about that. They always have access to what we call the partner if they need to talk to them. And you kind of start fitting and filling in that mold, and the client's needs, I think, are way more handled and more direct. And with Peridot, it's when we have staff meetings and everything, I always say, accessibility is key. If a client emails you, reply within 24 hours of that. If they call you and leave a voicemail, call back. And that's part of what the tenet is, and that's part of what we're trying to sell in this modern day firm. But there is growing pains that
There are definite challenges to overcome, and you almost don't see them because since you've not worked in that model before, you don't know what they are. And so you're constantly learning from the process. So for example, this office, I thought that I would work here a lot more. And I thought that and it didn't turn out that way. All my work product, all my files, and where I do my thinking, my head down work, as John Michael calls it, I still do that at home. I have a home office. But it's really nice to then separate from that to come meet a client at the office. And so I've flipped how I brand the office. Instead of it being about me, I call it a client center, because really that's what it's become. This has become a place for my clients and really not a place for me, because here's where I meet clients. We do a lot of project work in this office, and we also host workshops and training in here. So you learn from that. Another challenge is staffing. I think staffing is a big issue, because at some point when you start off, let's say, working from home, you will reach your capacity of what you are capable of doing. Even if you wanted to work 7 days a week and every night, you are eventually going to reach your capacity where you have to hire somebody or add to your team.
Yeah, it's staffing. How, like in the old traditional model, the staff would be there at 9, you're looking over their shoulder, you're seeing everything. In this new model, the way we approach it is we approach everything project based. The old way was like, oh, you're here at 9, you leave at 5, we're going to give you some stuff to do, you're going to train. This new model is we're going to give you some projects to do, and we train you through those projects, as opposed to, and if you work better at 9 o'clock at night or 7 a.m. on Saturday, you do that at your time, but you got to have these projects done by Friday, and we'll review it on Monday morning. And one thing I want to tackle too, or get across with this modern day firm, is this, what I perceive maybe is the stigma of what we call the home office. And from two directions. One, some people are like, oh, I couldn't work from home, I would never get anything done. Well, if you do truly, and you don't have to have a home office. There's plenty of co-working spaces where you can just go in for a few hours, and you can have a desk if you want. It doesn't, if you have roommates and you're like, I couldn't do that. There's places to break out to where you don't have to necessarily break into a brick and mortar. Co-working spaces are a great fill gap for that. But also, if you can, and if you have the luxury to break out of an independent office, and this is my office. Once you walk in, it's your office, and you are able to do that from your house. I have the luxury of that. I have a door, I shut, it's my office. It's way more convenient, way more efficient for me. And the other stigma, I get it from my mom.
And I remember your mom listens to these.
Yeah, well, my mother-in-law.
Oh, how do you know your mother doesn't listen to this?
I don't know. I don't think she does. Maybe. If she does, I'll let her mention this to me. But anyways, I get it from my mom. She's like, oh, you're home. Like, there's a stigma that working from home means you're like selling Tupperware.
Don't you think that's generational?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. It's the generational thing that the older my mom.
But if you're working from home, you're not actually working.
Yeah, it's like the old. Like they have this visualization that you're in your pajamas eating potato chips, watching cartoons while.
But I am.
Yeah, well.
Like I have that in the background, and I literally don't get dressed till 11 o'clock.
Well, but my point is that it's not a professional thing, getting up, putting your suit and tie on, and going into work. But the thing is the counteraction of that is how much more efficient it is. I still get up and I wear a tie during the day when I work, and especially when I meet with clients. But it's the efficiency of being able to work when you can instead of when you have to. When you are working in an office in a 9-to-5 situation, it's like you got to be there, you got to work. If your mind's not in it, you're just going to be zoning out. To where if you have this, but if you have a project that needs to be done by Friday, and you're able to work on that when you're feeling it, and you have that home office to do that without having to drive in 30 minutes, park your car, walk into an office, get in front of a computer, it's way more efficient. And in my mind, I have found that I'm way more efficient in my work output than I've ever been. You get into an office, and sure, you're set aside, you're at work, the wife's not going to call you because you're working, whatever the situation is. It causes you to force the work. instead of naturally doing it when you're naturally able to do it.
Well, I would add to that it's not for everybody, because the non-traditional model also places more responsibility on each member of the team to follow through, meet deadlines, and self-initiate when they start a project and how they finish a project. So in the past, we may have said, oh, you need to get this work done, you've got these hours to do it. But if you have all day and all weekend to get something done, some people will literally just not do it and put it off to the last minute. So you do have to be a self-initiator and take more responsibility, I think, than you do in the traditional model, where you kind of know you have to do it because you're there. You might as well do it, versus knowing I've got all day and all night and all this weekend to get caught up and get it done.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk more about the type of people that are good fits for this, but let's go ahead and take a quick break and take a word from our sponsors here.
This podcast is brought to you by Peridot Consulting and Marketing Outpost. Peridot Consulting offers a new paradigm in accounting services. We work with individuals and businesses toward prosperity and financial happiness. Please visit www.peridotconsultinginc.com for more information. Marketing Outpost provides strategies to solve problems and strategies to grow your business. Please visit www.marketingoutpost.com for more information.
All right, so we're back and we're talking about this new traditional model of this, what we're referring to as the modern firm, the modern workplace, where you take advantage of things like co-working spaces, working from home, being transient, meeting in coffee shops, meeting at locations.
And the challenges and benefits.
And the challenges and benefits. And what type of people is that a fit for? It's really a fit for people in today's world that are trying to get going. And in many ways, the old traditional model, they may go and recruit you from college and you go in and you hire and you're working at a staff. And that's probably a good way to learn some chops and learn that model. But if you are somebody that is a master of your own destiny, you're controlling how you do it and when you do it. And if you have that self-control that if you got to have it done by Friday or you don't get paid, well, you have it done by Friday. And most people in today's world, I think, are able to do that. And if with Peridot, we look for people we want to grow and we want to expand and we want to hire in Peridot. And we want people that want to grow within this model, that want to go out and build their own book of business and want to do this, but they also want to have the mentorship of a seasoned accountant there to be with them, and they want to be part of this team. I refer to everybody in Peridot as a partner. We don't refer to each other as staff or whatever. I don't care who you are. You're a partner in Peridot because that's how we approach everybody. Everybody's got their own corner, their own expertise, their own speciality, and we're all partners.
Well, and I think I would add again to what you're saying that everybody's a partner. And who is this really good for? I would say in one word, customization. If you want to be able to customize your daily schedule, then this kind of paradigm works for you. Because you can say, for example, I'm not a morning person. I really hit my creative peaks between 10 and 4 o'clock, and again between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. So for me, to force me to get out of bed and be somewhere at 8 o'clock when my brain just really doesn't wake up at that point, then it's kind of a waste of time. And there's a lot of people like that. They have their minds are really active and at their best at different times. You can also customize how you're working, meaning some people are really good at sitting for 2 hours straight and working on something, and other people need to take constant breaks. So, for example, in my work, I will work on a project for a while, and when I'm done, I really need a mental break, and I'll go for a jog. Or I just might go to the grocery store, just something to give myself that break, but I can stop, leave where I'm sitting and go do that and give myself that time and really customize my own schedule. So John Michael was talking about how he left the traditional model and went into a non-traditional. The way I left was that I was in corporate, I was in that traditional model. And for me, I thought I work really hard no matter if I'm in an office or if I'm at home. It didn't matter. I'm very responsible about my work. And yet I felt very restricted, not by the pay or the people or anything like that, but restricted by the growth capability. If I was on a fixed salary, I knew that I couldn't make more and do more than that unless I went and I asked for a higher salary. I knew that working on my own, I could actually dictate my own lifestyle versus XYZ company dictating what my lifestyle was going to be based on what they were going to pay me and what they thought. So for me, it was about independence and being able to customize my own schedule, knowing that I am a very, I think, disciplined, self-initiator kind of person. So it doesn't have to, and you don't have to be that kind of person either. I actually do know a lot of people that aren't these hardcore, overachieving, disciplined people that work from home, work in this non-traditional paradigm. And really all they just need to know is, what do you want done? What are the deadlines to do it? And I'll do it. And I'm a great networker and I'll bring other people in. They're not like hardcore, every minute of their day is planned,
Yeah. No, I mean, in many ways, this new model, it's getting away from the paradigm or the confines of time realization, like getting there at 8, leaving at 5. That's your work hour, and it's changing that time paradigm and transitioning it into a project-oriented paradigm that you've got X, Y, and Z to do. You do it at your own pace, you do it at your own time, but that's what you got to do. And in many ways, it rewards you for your own efficiency. If you were a salary worker and me and Mari both worked at the same firm and we both made $50,000 a year, and Mari was very efficient and she got 10 things done a week and she was awesome at what she did. And I, not so much. I got 5 things done a week. We would be getting paid the same. And, we were both there 9 to 5, but it wouldn't be realized. She wouldn't be rewarded for that efficiency. So in many ways, if after 3 years of doing that, Mari may be a little disheartened. She thinks maybe she's going to get a raise because she's going to be recognized for that, and not so much because I'm better friends with the owner and we golf, and who knows? I'm just saying that if you get away from that time-based paradigm and focus and project-based, if it was project-based pay, Mari would have been paid twice as much as I was in that situation because she doubled and the quality was the same. So in those paradigms, it's better. And if you attach that, a lot of the old accounting firms and lawyer firms and maybe even some marketing firms do what we call these timesheets. So when you're in this old accounting firm, you go in, it's kind of like clocking in, but you don't clock in. You fill out this timesheet and you get there at 9 o'clock and you work on marketing outposts for 2 hours between 9 and 11. So you put down 2 hours for marketing outposts, and you work on another client, XYZ, for 3 hours, and then 2 more hours on another client. And at the end of the day, that goes into the billing system, and the client once a week will be spit a bill out for the time you were working on those clients. That's a great, on the flat surface, that's a great method. But what happens when that same client got Mari last year, and Mari did it really good and efficiently, and their bill was for 5 hours, and then the next year they got me and they got the exact same thing and it took me 10 hours to do it, and they get that bill. It's the same output, but then they get a different bill because my timesheet was double because I wasn't as efficient as Mari, and they get a double bill because it was based off that time. So in many ways, it's not rewarding to the client when you're focusing on that time paradigm. So we try to focus on project-based, flat-based billing and also pay when we bring on staffers or partners. If you do 50 returns or 20 returns, you're going to be paid accordingly. And I don't care if it takes you 3 months to do it or 1 week to do it, but that's your time horizon, or that's how you want to do it. And we review it, and your quality control is in place. And if you honestly got 50 returns done and they all are perfect returns, good for you, and you get paid for that. And it rewards people for that efficiency in this new system that it's hard to do in the old traditional system.
And another challenge when you do work with this paradigm for yourself and other team is setting boundaries. Because you don't have the confines and those traditional boundaries, you tend to either way overdo it or not do it enough. So you're either finding yourself with no personal life or very little of it because all you're doing is working. Or maybe you are too leisurely and you're having too much of a good time, and then you're not meeting the demands of your clients that you said you would. So setting some boundaries, you still need to set your own personal schedule. And I think monitor that, as well as set some personal boundaries, because though we give our cell phones out to people, I'm not still expecting my clients to call me at 10 p.m. unless it's a true emergency, or to ask me to do something on a weekend unless they really need it. And that's part of what we're doing.
Well, yes. I mean, that's, of course. I mean, that's what voicemail's for. That's what email's for.
That's what the delete button is for.
No, not that. But I mean, obviously, everybody, like some people might not mind getting a 10 o'clock p.m. phone call just because that's them.
That's just you, John Michael.
Well, no,
you'll take a 10 o'clock phone call.
Depending on what I'm doing at the time. But if I'm happen to be working at my desk and a client calls me, by all means. A lot of times, though, in clients' defense, they call at 10 p.m. because they don't want to talk to you. They just want to leave a voicemail. So that happens.
You really think that's the case?
Yeah,
if they really do want to talk to you.
No, sometimes they're just like, hey, I just want to tell you X, Y, and Z real quick, and I'm done. I mean, so accessibility, I don't want it to be a backfire situation. Yes, there's boundaries. Yes, you can have hours set. Yes, you can keep those traditional hours where you're accessible 9 to 5 and not on the weekends. Of course, you can do all that. We're just talking about when you choose to be under your production. When you meet clients, it's generally under traditional hours. You know, you can say, I only do meetings Tuesdays from 8 to 12 in the morning, and that's it. And you got to book. It's totally at your discretion, or the firm you're working with, if you're self-employed or not. Obviously, if you're in a modern day firm, might be rules behind that, and you got to be aware of all that. But
so I would say then, let's do kind of a wrap up and re-summarize very briefly how we would define this new modern paradigm.
Yes. So the best way is comparing to the traditional firm. I think we talked about that, but it's about, being fluid, approachable, being efficient, being more about the project and less about the time, paperless.
Really utilizing technology, because you have to do that.
Technology is just taking advantage of the fact that technology exists. Some of these older firms, sometimes I don't know why they are stuck to this old model when they can save so much money in overhead, which filters down to some of these older firms charge the clients so much just because of the old paradigm that's set up with this timesheet paradigm. If that timesheet hits 5 staff accountants' desks, that bill's double, and it shouldn't be. And if in their defense, that's the model they're in, and they have so much overhead, they've got to charge that to their clients. But if they would just refocus this paradigm a little bit, they would have much lower overhead, which would filter to the clients, and they would still get the exact same service and exact same quality for half the cost, and the firms would have half the overhead, so their bottom line would not hurt. A lot of these old firms think that it's going to hurt their bottom line, when if they refocus that, it wouldn't. But anyways, I don't mean to.
Thanks, John Michael, for going off onto that part of it, but it was actually a very important point. The efficiency is probably the key benefit. Accessibility, efficiency, being able to have each person customize their own time and their own schedule. That is a real nice benefit. Some of the challenges are, of course, the staffing and growing part to get people to understand the model and be comfortable with it, and training them. Another challenge I would say is in communication, because once you get beyond yourself and you have somebody else, you need to implement some of those very same similar traditional processes where you can exchange information and everybody's on board, because now you can't just run down the hall and say, hey, where are you on this project? You really need to have a system in place where you can go into a central place, see what's going on, and make sure that everybody is putting their notes into that in order to stay up to date. So I think systems become highly important in that process, and that's a challenge. So communicating among the staff, and also maybe collaboration, because since you're not under one roof all the time, you're not necessarily collaborating as much as you would think. So you kind of have to build the collaboration time in. I recently hired a marketing coordinator, and once a week we have a in-office work day together because it actually helped with the training where we're in the same room, we're both working, and if she has a question, she can ask me, or if even I have a question, I can ask her. A lot easier than just trading a bunch of emails back and forth.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's many ways to do it. Mari mentioned some of the best examples. Cloud-based software is so easy when it comes to tangibilities of being able to do it. Obviously, there's emails and texts. If you're meeting with clients or customers and you have your staffers come with you, these trainees come with you for all of that. I mean, and you're going to have more conscious training than the old model where you just assume they're getting it. And you're going to have more conscious check-ins, more conscious phone calls, more directed conversations about it. But yes, it is a challenge to be on top of that and to implement that when within this model, you are independent in many ways and often running, and to implement that independence and also quality control is a very conscious thing within this model. You got to make sure there's checks and balances for your internal quality control for work output and everything. And those are all that are going to be challenges because more and more firms, if they like it or not, are switching into this modern firm. And the old traditional firms are just established. But as new firms start, and we are examples, they're starting in this modern firm paradigm, and the older firms are going to start fading out just because they won't be able to compete to the lower overhead eventually. So if they've got a course corrector, that overhead's going to get them.
Well, I think we've given a very good overview of the difference between the traditional versus modern day firm and how we have approached it.
Yeah, so we do want to thank you guys for joining us today. Please be sure to review this episode. And for more information on who we are or this podcast, please visit www.bammit.com. That is BAMM-IT.com. And our next episode is going to be about tax notices, which I promise will be interesting. I promise. Because tax notices panic in people, but it's fun to hear.
I really look forward to that episode.
Well, you should.
Like really. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
The hosts and the guests of this podcast make no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice and is for entertainment purposes. It is not guaranteed that you will find this as entertaining as the hosts find themselves.